Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am beyond excited that you're joining me, because today we're breaking down something that is honestly completely paradigm shifting. We're going to dive headfirst into the Tachymetric Manifesto. Now, this is a seriously dense, highly technical strategic document, but what it does is literally rewrite the entire future of faster-than-light travel. If you've ever found yourself wondering how we might actually get humanity to the stars without, breaking the fundamental laws of physics, well, you are definitely in the right place.
Okay, so right out of the gate, I want to hit you with this opening salvo straight from the manifesto itself. Quote, "The era of metric engineering is dead." I mean, wow, that is a huge statement. For decades, everything that science fiction and theoretical physics taught us was that to go faster than light, you needed a warp drive. Physically bending or folding the fabric of space-time. Well, the manifesto argues that this whole approach is fundamentally flawed. Pretty much everything we thought we knew about building a warp drive, it turns out it's been a massive 30-year detour.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The warp drive dead end. 2. Tuning the quantum vacuum. 3. The safety pass mechanism. 4. Powering the phase drive. And finally, 5. The superluminal future.
All right, Section 1. The warp drive dead end, the 30-year trap of metric engineering.
So why exactly did the brightest minds in physics basically hit a brick wall for 3 decades? Well, historically, all our failed attempts relied on parameters that are just impossible. Take the Alcubierre drive from 1994. It proposed warping spacetime, but needed an absurd amount of negative energy. We're talking 10 to the 26th kilograms. That's literally more mass energy than exists in the observable universe. Later models by Vandenbroek and Lentz tried to fix this, but they still leaned on weird, non-physical exotic matter, or they simply got mathematically refuted. The real nail in the coffin came in 2022 with the Santiago limit. It essentially proved, mathematically, that bending spacetime will always demand impossible energy. The whole physics community was just trying to solve the problem in the wrong domain, the gravitational sector.
So, the crucial point here, and this is such a brilliant analogy from the source material, is to think of metric engineering like trying to physically bend a highway. It's this impossible brute force fight against the geometry of spacetime. Instead, the manifesto says we need to pivot to constitutive engineering. So, rather than bending the road, what if we just change the speed limit of the medium you're driving through? No speeding tickets required. We literally stop fighting gravity and start tuning the quantum vacuum itself. Moving on to Section 2, Tuning the Quantum Vacuum. Introducing the Tachymetric Phase Drive. To really grasp how this tachymetric phase drive, or TPD, works, we've got to look at the tachymetric vacuum phase. See, the speed of light isn't just some random, hard-coded number. It's actually an emergent property defined by the electromagnetic medium of the vacuum, specifically its permittivity and permeability. What the TPD does is create this bounded bubble that locally dials down those properties, and it does this using totally normal, positive definite energy. Inside this bubble, the effective speed of light is intrinsically higher, but, and this is key, the underlying spacetime metric stays completely perfectly flat. It is not a warp drive, guys. It's vacuum dispersion engineering.
And here is the real kicker. By abandoning gravitational manipulation and working within the electromagnetic sector, the math does something absolutely miraculous. 10 to the 8th joules. The energy requirement literally drops by a factor of 1 million. We go from needing this impossible nuclear blast scale of energy to just 100 million joules. To put that into perspective for you, that's equivalent to running a standard 10-megawatt fission reactor for 42 seconds. That's it. All of a sudden, faster-than-light travel isn't just a mathematical curiosity. It is thermodynamically engineerable.
Which brings us to Section 3, the safety pass mechanism, surviving the superluminal trip.
Now, any skeptic looking at this is immediately going to ask the obvious question, right? Hey, if you shoot a ship through space at 10 times the speed of light, doesn't the crew inside just turn to absolute mush? How do you even survive that trip? Well, the answer is this incredibly elegant concept called the crossover frequency. The TPD essentially acts like a vacuum prism. It creates a dispersion state that is frequency dependent. This means that the speed at which things propagate through the vacuum inside the bubble is entirely dictated by their physical scale. It's literally the ultimate safety mechanism because it separates the macroscopic from the microscopic.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how that physical scale dictates the separation into two distinct zones. First, you've got the normal atomic zone, high-frequency structures. So your DNA, the atoms making up your body, the ship's computers, they experience zero modification. The fine structure constant doesn't budge. So human biology behaves completely normally. For the crew, local physics is just cruising along at the standard speed of light. But in the superluminal macroscopic zone, the massive, low-frequency bulk of the ship couples with that modified vacuum. So the ship itself is traveling at 10 times the speed of light, while the people inside feel like they're just sitting in their living room. The vacuum isn't accelerating the crew, it's accelerating the frame they are sitting in. They're basically riding in a fast-forward vacuum.
And this frequency-dependent trick? It's exactly how the TPD systematically dismantles what the manifesto calls the universal sensors. These are the classic historical arguments that supposedly made FTL impossible. Take Lorentz invariance. That's protected because the modification is strictly local and soft. What about causal paradoxes? You know, the whole fear of accidentally traveling backward in time and meeting your grandfather? That's solved because while the group velocity goes superluminal, the front velocity strictly stays at the standard speed of light. And those impossible energy conditions we talked about earlier? Completely bypassed, simply because we ditched the gravity sector for the electromagnetic one. The universal sensors are rendered utterly irrelevant.
All right, let's get into the nuts and bolts. Section 4, powering the phase drive, the living architecture. So how do we actually build this thing? The manifesto is super clear that brute force energy injection is just a relic of the past. To pull this off, we need a massive synthesis of disciplines. They refer to it as the living architecture, and it relies on these 7 cross-domain mechanisms. And honestly, it is wild how it pulls from such different fields. It uses resonant coupling from music theory to amplify energy without needing more input power. It borrows stress accumulation from geology to kind of bank energy diffusely over time, so you avoid those impossible peak power spikes. It even taps into fluid dynamics to create a supercavitation bubble that eliminates drag. And immunology, yes, immunology, to give the system an adaptive memory so it learns more efficient transit patterns over time. By cascading these 7 mechanisms together, the energy requirement is slashed by 6 orders of magnitude. Just incredible.
And this brilliantly illustrates how it all comes together in practice for, let's say, a standard 10 light-year transit. First, you've got a prep phase, taking maybe 2 to 4 hours to query the optical field patterns. Then comes the accumulation phase, where you bank energy over an hour or two, almost like tectonic stress building up before an earthquake. Step 3 is nucleation. This happens in less than 100 microseconds. A tiny pulse triggers a phase snap, and boom, the bubble forms. Step 4 is the transit itself, maintaining 10 times the speed of light for about a year. Finally, dissolution. The bubble contracts, and get this, the system thermoelastically recaptures 80 to 95% of that energy to use again later. We aren't forcing the universe to do anything. We're just elegantly coaxing the vacuum into a phase transition.
Section 5, the superluminal future. Terrestrial spin-offs and the roadmap.
Now, what's absolutely incredible about the manifesto is it makes it very clear this tech isn't just for hopping between star systems. It's really a garage-to-galaxy narrative. It has massive, immediate implications right here on Earth. Think about a superluminal internet. By using subterranean phase conduits to encode data into ultra-low frequency modes, data could zip around the planet at 50 times the speed of light. That literally collapses global latency. A doctor could perform flawless, real-time remote robotic surgery from across the globe. Then you have vacuum phase computing. Imagine shrinking these tachymetric domains down to the nanometer scale inside microchips, signals propagating between gates at superluminal speeds. We're talking 50 gigahertz processing power, but only generating the heat of a 5 gigahertz chip. That's a total generational leap for global infrastructure.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the ultimate 60-year horizon. The manifesto doesn't just throw out ideas, it lays out a highly disciplined, step-by-step roadmap. The first 5 years, that's all theoretical validation and mapping the vacuum. Years 5 to 15, we move into the lab, proving we can locally alter the speed of light on a tiny nanometer scale. Then, years 15 to 40, that's the heavy engineering development phase, scaling up to macroscopic bubbles and integrating fusion power. And finally, years 40 to 60, flight testing. The whole thing culminates in a crewed transit to Alpha Centauri. That's a journey of 4.37 light-years, and we do it in just 10.5 months.
The manifesto sums up this entire massive paradigm shift perfectly with this one powerful statement. We did not break the speed of light. We changed the medium that defined it. By finally abandoning the completely impossible task of bending space-time,
and instead learning to tune the electromagnetic properties of the quantum vacuum, humanity basically transitions from fighting the universe's limits to actively architecting them.
So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a thought directly inspired by the closing words of the manifesto. The vacuum of space isn't just some vast, empty nothingness, right? It's a canvas. It is the last great frontier of human engineering. The stars are no longer these unreachable lights in the sky. They are attainable destinations. So when this 60-year roadmap is complete and that tachymetric wave is finally ready to be ridden, where will humanity choose to go first? Think about that for a bit. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredible material, and hey, keep your eyes on the stars.